Hello, BookTube. Well, it's going to be hot today here in Boston. Hot and humid. In a few hours, it's going to be in the mid-90s Fahrenheit. An isolated event, a one-off, as the Brits say, because the temperature is going to drop by 30 degrees overnight and not go any higher than 80 degrees Fahrenheit tomorrow, or for the foreseeable future. This is a spike. It looks like it's going to be a spike. But oh my, is it going to be a laid-back day. The Bean and I are not going to be out charging around doing things at all. We went out first thing this morning, early enough so that we actually met a neighbor who has a sweet, older, little fluffy white dog. I think of them as a Deb dog because my Deb always has dogs like that. This fluffy little white dog puts up with Frida. And because he puts up with her, she doesn't yell at him. She doesn't boss him around. That's as close as she comes to having friends among her own kind. But that person also just recently got a golden retriever puppy, she is the most adorable thing in the world. She's still 8 weeks old at most. She is in that puppy stage where she has no bones, where she's just a sort of a Play-Doh type creature, and where she defers to everybody. If she moves around too quickly, Frida will yell at her just briefly. One of Frida's thunderous, throaty growls that don't have any, so to speak, teeth behind them. Frida would never bite another dog. She counts on her authority being enough, and when she does that to that little puppy, the little puppy freezes. My heart goes out to her. I always have to go over and just sort of scoop her up and say, "Oh, it's okay. It's all right." That owner seems very sweet, very well-intentioned, but also totally clueless. She inherited the older dog and got the younger dog during, a period where she was working from home. No idea what she's in for. She says over and over again that the puppy is so sweet, so wonderful, and I want to tell her, you're about a week out. You're about a week, maybe 10 days away from that no longer being true. The thing that's going to change that is in about a week or 10 days, this adorable little puppy is still going to be adorable. But she is going to decide at about that time to bite and chew everything. Everything. Living, animate or inanimate. And I want to tell this woman that because she has no idea what's coming. None whatsoever. I will be right there. I will be carefully watching because that's when people give up their puppies. That's when they bring the puppy to the pound. They figure, it's a puppy, it's a purebred, somebody will surely adopt her, but I can't take this anymore. And I want to be right there so that doesn't happen. If worst comes to worst, I will take that puppy myself. But that's also going to mark a drastic change in those little get-togethers because the thing that will drive that puppy at that age to start chewing and biting everything is also going to drive her to not quail in fear when she gets that throaty reprimand from Frida. She's no longer going to cower in fear. Instead, she's going to bounce even more and nip and bite at Frida, and that could cause problems. that could cause problems. That might mean that I would have to keep them separate. But one way or another, they were out first thing this morning, and I was out first thing this morning. But I'm thinking not for the rest of the day. If it were just heat, it would be one thing, but it's gross, just disgusting. An exhausting kind of heat to walk around in. So I don't think I'm going to be making a whole lot of videos either. I know I always say that, and that I always do. But I thought we'd at least go through my mail, especially since there are a couple of boxes. But first, we've got periodicals, including the Vineyard Gazette, the Martha's Vineyard Gazette. This is a broadsheet newspaper from the island of Martha's Vineyard that has a separate section. It now has a Vineyard Living section. It's a 2-section paper now. And the back of the Vineyard Living section is now where you get the Vineyard Gardener and the bird news and all that, which is the main thing that people look at the Vineyard Gazette for. I shouldn't say that. I hate to say it because one of the other things that's usually in the Vineyard Gazette, not this time around, is a book review from me. But most people go straight to the bird news. But I also got the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement, the greatest literary review journal in the English language. And this one, as you can see on the cover, is all about Proust. It is apparently the 150th anniversary of his birth was July something or other. So there's an article in here, the very lead-off article by Adam Watt, on Proust at 150, and it was interesting, I guess, in a way, a little bit derivative. I'm pretty sure it was written at one go. If I want to see Proust's writing compared to surrealist painting, I can crap out that kind of stuff myself. I don't need Alan Watt to do it for me. But there was a much, much better piece, so good, by Sarah Lonsdale on The Diary of a Provincial Lady by E.M. Delafield, which is a book that I don't own and that I haven't read in forever. I loved it. Of course, everybody who reads it loves it, but I haven't read it in forever. And this is just a re-examination of that book. In very favorable terms, I'm glad to say. I'm glad that it wasn't a destruction of The Diary of a Provincial Lady, because The Diary of a Provincial Lady is wonderful. It's hilarious. Then we have the letters page, which is ordinarily, I would only show it to you because of conflicts. Sometimes scholars will snipe at each other in the letters page. But instead, I want to bring up Chaucer. There was an article in an earlier TLS mentioning that a couple of universities in the UK have dropped Chaucer classes, so that in those universities now it is possible for students to go through their entire education without ever being brought into contact with Chaucer's work. We get a couple of letters to that effect. One writer says, we learn of the threatened state of Chaucer studies not only at the university level, but also by implication at A level. I find it sobering that in 1947, when I took school certificate, Chaucer's General Prologue was a set book. One question asked us to render a passage from it into modern English. I do not recall that at 14 or 15 years old we had any study aid and that we found any insuperable difficulties. We were, of course, also studying Latin and French. Now, you don't hit any insuperable difficulties even without that. You don't have to passively, aggressively signal how intelligent you are. And then another article mentions that in one recent piece about Chaucer, the casual mention is made that he was a rapist, and no more is made of it. It's accepted at face value. And the author of the letter from Brandeis University wants to know what the evidence is. Is there any evidence? Can anyone shed more light on what is known and what is unknown about this accusation? Those two letters were really interesting. And then later on, we get a letter on a different subject. Close but different subject. A writer writes, Emma Wells's review of The Red Prince, The Life of John of Gaunt, mentioned his first two marriages, to Blanche and to Constance, but the review made no mention of Catherine Swynford, his third wife, who had been the Duke's lover for many years before their marriage. She is the subject of a wonderfully romantic novel, Catherine, by Anya Seton, which I recommend to young people of any age. And I have also appreciated the modern biography by Alison Weir, published in 2007. And I thought that collection of letters was interesting. I wonder if anybody's going to write in at how close that third letter comes to mentioning Chaucer, but does not. But anyway, there's an article on Macron of France and his love of Napoleon Bonaparte. There's an article on Keir Starmer, and there's Kim Leadbeater, who won at Batley and Spen, and is seen widely in the British political commentariat as having given life to Keir Starmer's Labour Party, because if Labour had lost at Batley and Spen, then there were serious calls for Keir Starmer to resign as head of the Labour Party. If Labour couldn't win in a staunchly Labour district, but thanks to Kim Leadbeater and also her slain sister, they did win, just barely. So, but the pull quote here mentions that the Starmer of this biography is fascinating without being interesting. I think that's a perfect description of Sir Keir Starmer just in general, is that he is fascinating without being interesting. But there's another wonderful thing here. I don't think I will ever get this. It doesn't look like it's an American publication. There's a wonderful book. Sounds like a wonderful book. The review is by Adam Labor, and it's about one particular district in British Mandate Jerusalem, which I thought the book sounds fascinating. I would love to get my hands on it, but I don't think it's ever going to get an American publication. Oh yes, okay, a couple of other things here, but there was one other thing that I wanted to point out to you. There's a review here by Andrew Hadfield, who's written books that I like. Yes, yeah, oh yeah, he wrote a book on John Donne that I liked about two books. A new edition of Thomas North's 1555 travel journal. Thomas North traveled on the continent and kept notes, and two authors have pieced together those notes into a kind of travel journal. And the other book under review is something that I've read and reviewed myself, North by Shakespeare by Michael Blanding, in which Blanding takes the stylometric researches of another figure, Dennis McCarthy, and writes a book about them. Writes a book about McCarthy's contention that if you use plagiarism detective software like teachers use, it clearly gives an impression that another hand was at work in all of Shakespeare's plays, other than a couple of minor ones. And I thought the juxtaposition was fascinating, but I didn't like how easily Andrew Hadfield writes off what Dennis McCarthy finds. He mentions here, the mainstay of McCarthy's evidence is his faith in the plagiarism software that he uses and its ability to turn up unique correspondences that demonstrate direct relationships between verbal clusters. This seems a bit dubious to me, as most authorship study experts try to find underlying patterns in an author's style and habitual mode of writing that are largely unconscious, and so cannot be explained by influence or borrowing. I don't get that at all. I don't understand what those sentences literally mean. But I also don't understand what I suspect is the author's point. He seems to be saying that, what was it? What was the phrase? Relationships between verbal clusters can only happen intentionally. He seems to rule out the idea, experts try to find underlying patterns in author style and habitual mode of writing that are largely unconscious, and so cannot be explained by influence or borrowing. When it's not a zero-sum thing. This software, this anti-plagiarism software, which I might point out, Andrew Hadfield, he teaches school at media studies at the University of Sussex. He's almost certainly used this software himself, and he doesn't have any bones about its accuracy when he uses it on his students. But I have to believe that he understands that the point of this anti-plagiarism software is to highlight unlikely correspondences, whether they're conscious or unconscious. Unlikely correspondences mean an influence of one text on another. Whether the second person, the recipient text, is consciously borrowing or not, it hardly makes a difference. It shows something, the better those examples get. And I think it's a little bit dirty pool that the couple of examples that Andrew Hadfield uses, that he references from North by Shakespeare, are some of the weakest examples instead of the strongest. That's not the way that you set up an opposing argument in order to knock it down. You're supposed to give the best examples and knock those down. I don't get the reference here, but one way or another, I strongly recommend North by Shakespeare. It is a very, very interesting Shakespearean scholarship, Shakespearean authorship book. Then we get to the in brief section, which is the TLS has 2 pages of sort of 200-word reviews instead of their full-page reviews. And it's like this in brief section was written for Jason Harrigan. Because the first book, Jason, keep in mind, is one of the most religious people in our little corner of BookTube, and also, and maybe not unrelatedly, one of the weirdest. And so the first book in brief section is Dark Archives, which we've seen before. I think we saw it on this channel, which is a librarian's investigation into the science and history of books bound in human skin. Are we 100% sure that in his library of curiosities, Jason does not have a book bound in human skin? I guarantee you, he knows all about how they do at auctions. He knows all about provenance of such items. There's not only that, on the weird side of Jason's bookist interest, but there's also a brief biography of brief review of a new biography of Bernard of Clairvaux, um, of one of the greatest Cistercians of all time, and one of the only readable Cistercians. And the two go perfectly together. Right? They talk to the separate two of the separate aspects of Jason's bookish life, and then we tootle off for the day. There's a hilarious piece in the NB column at the back about Boris Johnson's rumored Shakespeare book that is coming up. Apparently, someone went public anonymously, saying that the person who went public anonymously was the Shakespeare scholarship, the Shakespeare scholar that was contacted by the Prime Minister's office to sort of ghostwrite the book, essentially, to help ghostwrite the book. That Johnson would call him if he had any questions about Shakespeare, and then he would record the answers and punch them up. The book has been delayed, and the book, of course, was catapulted to fame just a few months ago, when Dominic Cummings said in a full address to Parliament, he said it publicly, that one of the reasons why Boris Johnson just simply skipped a lot of his early and vital COVID-19 briefing sessions is because he was working on his Shakespeare book. So that brought it right back to the attention of the British public. But the TLS in that NB article tries to decide. They try to figure out who that Shakespeare scholar might be, who is conscripted to work with Boris Johnson. I'm sure it will all come out eventually when the book comes out. And unfortunately, the book will be a bestseller. I've already reviewed a Boris Johnson book, and I tore it to shreds. It was very bad, and it was also very obviously not his work. I will ping in my little alternate reality hope. Boris Johnson does have a skill. He is skilled in a scurrilous, scandalous way, but nevertheless a genuine skill at Fleet Street deadline prose. He's skilled at that. He's good at it. He's very much not good at being prime minister. He's very much not good at being a politician. He is an unbelievable liar. Just unbelievably compulsive liar. He will start telling a lie in an interview without even knowing what the end of that same lie is going to be. You can just see him making stuff up because he has nothing but contempt for virtually the entire world. Certainly for English people. He has nothing but contempt for them. There's a small coterie of people that he kind of sort of likes. None of them trust him. But everyone else, you're not even when it doesn't matter at all, you're not worth me telling the truth to. I'm just going to make up a lie, and I'm not even going to hide the fact that I'm lying because you're not even worth that. Unfortunately, he had ambition, which is the poison at the heart of so many men. And he will write this book. Eventually, it will get done, and it will be a bestseller, and everybody will talk about it. But one way or another, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And then we get the coming attractions. Apparently, the next issue of the TLS will be about duels, famous duels. There you have a painting of me and Mark Richardson. Off in the background, you can see frightened civilians. We were on the precipice of dueling with each other over Deb. And then I said, wait a minute, are you talking my Deb or your Deb? And he said, my Deb. And I said, well, of course you duel for your Deb. I thought we were dueling about mine. And he said, no, I'm not dueling for your Deb. Thanks anyway. And I said, well, do you want her anyway? How about if I shoot myself? Those of you who may be wondering, my Deb has gone back up to the wilds of Maine, where there is no Wi-Fi, where there aren't any paved roads, where there's no electricity, where they churn the butter by hand. And it's not deprivation, because apparently there's email, and I get emails saying how blissful she is just out there in the wilderness reading. That's all she's doing is reading. It should come as no surprise to anybody. That's all she's doing is reading. Sometimes she'll read inside, sometimes she'll read outside. That's all she's doing is reading and taking care of her tiny little floofy dog. I will work on it. I will work on Wi-Fi. She stopped in Boston briefly, and we kept missing each other for a good Wi-Fi connection that would make a Zoom chat possible. I will keep trying. Maybe she could go 50 miles to the general store where I think they have the Wi-Fi. Anyway, anyway, and then we've got the packages. Then we've got actual packages, and then we can wrap up this little gab fest. So what have we got here? What's the first one? It's a novel. Okay, it's from the folks at W.W. Norton. Always good to hear from them. This is The Family Chow by Lan Samantha Chang. Little dog on the cover. And this comes out in February of next year. Good Lord, this is one of only 2 books that I have for 2022. Acclaimed storyteller Lan Samantha Chang's new book is a gorgeous, gripping literary mystery that explores family betrayal, passion, culture, and the American dream. All that is according to Jean Kwok. The residents of Haven, Wisconsin have dined on the fine Chow's restaurant's delicious Americanized Chinese food for 35 years, happy to ignore any unsavory whispers about the family owners. But when brash, charismatic, and tyrannical patriarch Leo Chow is found dead, presumed murdered, his sons discover that they've drawn the exacting gaze of the entire town. The ensuing trial brings to light potential motives for all 3 brothers. Dagao, the restaurant's reckless head chef, Ming, financially successful but personally tortured, and the youngest, gentle but lost college student James. Brimming with heartbreak, comedy, and suspense, this novel offers a kaleidoscopic, highly entertaining portrait of a Chinese-American family grappling with the dark undercurrents of a seemingly pleasant small town. I love it. Absolutely love it. I won't read this, of course, until next year, but I love the idea very much so, and I'm also intimately connected with the idea. Once upon a time, before the pandemic and before my previous 2 dogs got sick, I used to go at least once a week to a little hole-in-the-wall Chinese food restaurant in Chinatown, here in Boston, to read periodicals. For years and years, my girls were, my previous 2 dogs, my pointer and my basset hound, were older, but they weren't sick and they weren't dying. But they were 10 years old, 11 years old, which meant that they slept all day long, every day. They were happy to go on little toddling walks with me. They were happy to get cuddled and smooched by me, but they mostly slept. And so I felt no compunction at all about occasionally packing up, making sure they had water and food, and then leaving for a couple of hours to go read periodicals. And I always went to the same place, a little hole-in-the-wall Chinese food restaurant that was a multi-generational thing. I always got the same thing, always did the same thing. I was always the only white person there. It was blissful, absolutely blissful. And I don't go anymore. Habits can be broken. They can be formed and they can be broken. I don't go anymore. When my girls stopped being just old and started failing, when they started being sick, then it didn't feel right to leave them because they weren't just sleeping peacefully. They were partially fretfully awake and knew when I wasn't there, and they didn't like it. And then when they started dying, first my basset hound, and then a few months later my pointer started the long, slow process where they're not even sick anymore, they're just dying. Then you can't leave. Then I didn't leave to do anything. I was here 24 hours a day. And that was enough to take a real hammer blow to that habit. And then I kind of thought about reviving it, but by that time I had a tiny little puppy. And you can't leave a tiny little puppy unsupervised. You can't leave them alone. I'm not going to put a dog in a cage. Giving the little dog the signal that this place where you live is not all yours. No, this place is Frida's. So I wasn't going to put her in a cage. And you don't need it anyway, because it takes if the dog is being well and consistently socialized, then in a very little time, comparatively little time, a couple of months, they're going to understand what's good and what's bad to do, what's right and what's wrong to do. It's not going to take long at all to establish that. Needless to say, as you could probably tell from a mile off, I'm not a fan of crates. Crates are not crates, they're cages. I'm not a fan of putting people you love in cages. There's never a reason for it. But one way or another, I had a little puppy who not only didn't have any idea what was going on, but also didn't want me to be gone. And so I stuck around. I just continued the habit of not going to my version of the Family Chow's restaurant. And after a while, then COVID happened, and that habit is now well and truly gone. Well and truly. It would feel weird to do now. it would feel weird to do. I would feel not only like I was punishing Frida, but that I was being punished. So that era is over, but I know it well. I know it absolutely well. The original proprietors of my Chinese food restaurant came to me one day when I was busily, angrily annotating the London Review of Books at my table to present me with a little baby. The man and woman who owned the shop had had a child, and they considered me to be good luck. And the name they gave me meant the scholar. That they referred to me as the scholar. It was only much later that a maitre d' at the restaurant told me that that's what the family name for me is. But they wanted to present me with their child, their firstborn son, and just so I could look at him, I guess, and see. I didn't dare to hold a little baby. I don't know the first thing about how to do that. And then what felt to me like hardly any time later, it felt like just a few issues of the London Review of Books later, what felt to me like hardly any time later, I was sitting there angrily annotating the New York Review of Books or whatever, when that baby and his wife came to my table to present me with their baby. And say, we thought it was a neat little family tradition. I laughed my head off. And that baby grew up to become one of my muscular teenagers, the muscular teenager through whom I met all the other muscular teenagers. They're all gone from me now. COVID broke our habit of hanging out, spending time with each other, them lifting and carrying everything I want lifted and carried, doing all the heavy work. So COVID has been a disruption in all of that. So this will be a trip down memory lane for me, but not for a while. So let's see what this next one is. Scissors right here. The third box, the one after this one, is a priority mail box. So one of you may have misbehaved and sent something. Can't really be all that disapproving, since one of you sent me a book yesterday that I really wanted. So we'll see. Maybe that'll happen again. It's hard for me to issue moral strictures when you're hitting bullseyes. Oh, okay, great, fantastic. Here, let's wait for the siren. By my count, that's 3 times in one 20-minute video. That's all right, though. There's no way around it. No way around it. As I mentioned, I did an experiment, and it never actually stops. Never. So even the idea of making videos at 3:30 in the morning, it never actually stops. So I'm going to ignore it. I'm hoping that you can ignore it. I'm just not going to scream over it. That's the only reason that I stop. Several of you pointed out that thanks to the audio equipment of this camera, it's less noticeable to you than it is to me. That's great. I'm glad. I hope it doesn't bother you. But it's very noticeable to me, and I would have to scream over it to be heard, and I don't want to do that. So that accounts for the pauses. But anyway, this is, I believe, an August release. I've been looking forward to it. In a way, leerily, this is Susan Ronald's book, The Ambassador, a new book about Joseph Kennedy, the patriarch of the Kennedy family, during his time as ambassador to the court of St. James. An infamous period of time, obviously, because he made pronouncements while he was ambassador that were rightly seen, I believe, as pretty favorable, pretty condemnatory to the British, pretty favorable to the fascists in Germany. It's a tricky subject. I wonder at what this author thinks she can bring to the table. I didn't get an advance copy of this, so I have no idea what her thesis is. Let's see if we can tell. On February 18th, 1938, Joseph Kennedy was sworn in as ambassador to the court of St. James. To say his appointment to the most prestigious and strategic diplomatic post in the world shocked the establishment was an understatement. Known for his profound Irish roots and staunch Catholicism, not to mention his plain-spoken opinions and womanizing, he was a curious choice as Europe hurtled towards war. Initially welcomed by the British, in less than 2 short years, Kennedy was loathed by the White House, the State Department, and the British government. Believing firmly that fascism was the inevitable wave of the future, he consistently misrepresented U.S. official foreign policy internationally, as well as direct instructions from President Franklin Roosevelt himself. The Americans were the first to disown him, and the British and Nazis used Kennedy to their own ends. Through meticulous research and many newly available sources, Ronald confirms in impressive detail what has long been believed by many, that Kennedy was a fascist sympathizer and an anti-Semite whose only loyalty was to his family's advancement. She also reveals the ambitions of the Kennedy dynasty during this period abroad as they sought to enter the world of high society London and establish themselves as America's first family. Okay, who is Susan Ronald? Oh, what a great author photo. Look at that. So who is she when she's at home? She's a British-American biographer, historian, and author of several works, including Condé Nast, A Dangerous Woman, and Hitler's Art Thief, and also Heretic Queen. Okay, I could swear I've read a couple of those. I could swear that I have. I'll have to look and see. But one way or another, there you've got the family there. There you've got Kick Kennedy. Notice a couple of the boys are missing. There's a kind of an odd picture to use for the cover photo, but that's okay. Certainly the Kennedy family posed for other photos that would have made maybe better cover images. I wonder if there are photos in this thing. Oh, wow, it doesn't look like there are any. How can that be? You can't make a new book like this without photos. Is that true? Wow. Okay, there doesn't look to be any photos. One way or another, I don't always write about the Kennedys, despite the long-standing joke of old friends of mine that all I write about are dead Romans, dead Kennedys, and dogs. That is not true. I write about all kinds of things. In fact, I very seldom write about the Kennedys, comparatively speaking. I don't make it a point to catch every book and write about it, but I am going to be reviewing this one. So it's great to have a finished copy. And then we have this big priority mailbox. It's awful big. So if it's something from one of you, then it's probably multiple books, multiple violations of rule number 1. Let's see what this is. See if one of you has misbehaved. Oh no! Oh no! It's not you who've misbehaved. It's me. Now calm yourself. Calm down. Just calm down. This is an old Chromebook. Just calm down. Just calm down. I mentioned in an earlier mail haul that when I was flat on my back and feeling terrible at one point, I went online and ordered an old Chromebook. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Chromebooks are made to access Google Chrome, the operating system that Google has made. And Google Chrome is the platform through which you can access Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, Google Photos, Google itself, YouTube, Gmail. Once Google created this gigantic ecosystem of its own, it made its own operating system and then thought, well, if that's all you need, then you could have a laptop, a clamshell laptop, that is only for accessing that, and it therefore is a Chromebook. You can do everything that a normal person would want to do online in Chrome. You can't play elaborate video games on it. Video gamers avoid Chrome OS. And you can't do maybe elaborate video or photo editing in Chrome OS, although there are plenty of third-party apps that work just fine, I think. Power users of computers can't really use Chromebooks. Google's insight 10 years ago or 5 years ago, whenever they started making Chromebooks, was, I think, genius in its simplicity, which is that 99% of all people who use computers are not power users. And so why not offer them, especially students and maybe people on a budget, a much cheaper kind of laptop that still gives them the full internet experience? That is a Chromebook. So a Chromebook is not a place like your laptop where you put, files and apps and icons all over the desktop. Instead, Chromebooks typically come with very little internal storage, almost none. And instead, you are storing things on the Google system, in the cloud. Because it's not a place, it's a doorway to a place. And I like Chromebooks. I like them a lot. I like the fact that you can, for $50, go out and get a machine that is the totality of the internet, except for small fractions of extremely advanced usership. So when I was flat on my back and feeling rotten, I ordered an old Chromebook for $50 or $30, $35 with tax. And it came, and it didn't work. And I'm not saying that it didn't work well. It's a 10-year-old machine. It's not obviously going to work well. I'm saying it didn't work at all. It didn't turn on. It had no power. And would not take a charge. Or either that or it had a dead screen. But I don't think it had a dead screen because I checked it with an external monitor and there was still nothing. So I really think it was just a dead machine. And I got it off eBay, and it was the very first experience I've had with eBay in any way, ordering anything, where the item was just plain useless, where the seller descriptions involved were just lies. There was no way at all that the seller didn't know that they were sending me a dead machine. They did it anyway. It was the only time I've ever had that. I've had people on eBay with books and all sorts of other things lie about conditions, fudge about judgment calls, but not simply sell me something that is defective and that they knew was defective. But the fact that that was a dud made me think I maybe wanted another one. Even though several of you issued your condemnations of this habit of mine. One of you said that the fact that the Chromebook arrived dead was God's judgment, telling me not to get 10-year-old Chromebooks that I'm going to plug in, use once, and then forget about. I resist that characterization. I often go back to my old Chromebooks. I find them fun to play on. I like them. They hold a charge like nobody's business, and they are completely secure. No malware, no phishing, no bots, no nothing like that. It doesn't happen on a Chromebook. And even on a MacBook, it can. I had a MacBook once years ago that I lost to that. A bug got into it, and there was no way for me to get rid of it. And the bug was telling me the way to get rid of this bug is to connect it to another device. Well, obviously you want me to do that so you can affect all of my devices. Instead, I had to just quarantine the thing and get rid of it. Whereas that won't happen on a Chromebook. But anyway, I ordered another Chromebook. So what do we have here? Oh, right. I ordered a very sturdy Dell Chromebook that was made for schools. So it's this one here. I don't know that I have the model number here, and I'm not sure that I remember what it is. But this. Oh, okay. Well, there's question number one answered. This does have power. There we go. It's already fishing for Wi-Fi. So this is my new Chromebook, and you'll notice the trackpad is slightly recessed. It's not flush with the screen. The keys are slightly recessed and also laser printed, so that you really cannot get these things off the chassis. This is made to be pounded on by school children. And another feature that you can see is you can't really tell it on camera, but this is rimmed all around with rubber, so that you could theoretically drop this, and if it hits on an edge, it won't break anything. And it's got these heavy-duty hinges. And also, unusual for Chromebooks, this one has speakers right up in front, pointing directly at the user, instead of where Chromebook speakers usually are, which is at the bottom, so that when you're using it on your lap, the sound is muffled. And another way that you can tell that this was made for students is this thing here. That bar lights with different colors depending on whether or not the student is working, a different color if the student has a question, that sort of thing. I think it's fascinating. I'm going to have to play around with what color I can get it to be. And this does have power. This did not come to me dead. So let's see, since I've got you here. Let's see if it connects to Wi-Fi. Let's see if this is actually going to work. Oh no, oh goodness gracious. See, this is the sort of thing that the tech channels edit out, but I'm not a tech channel, so let's see. I'm curious to know if this will actually work. Oh, it will. Look at that. Look at that. Uh, I want to see if I can just show you that it's connected to the internet. Uh, See, the neat thing about Chromebooks is the setup is just so easy. With a MacBook, it's a good hour. Uh, but with a Chromebook, you just have to let it know who you are, and it connects you to your Google experience, which is already set up. So it's already there. So, uh, what is going on here? Boy, I like the keyboard already, even in the little bit. Maybe I will work on this today. That's typically what I do. When I get a new Chromebook, I will work on it that day because all of my work is in Google anyway. All the stuff that I'm going to be working on today is all the stuff that I'm going to be working on today is in Google Docs already. I use Google as a search engine. A large chunk of my day will be Gmail. All of that is wow. See, this is an eternity here when you're dealing with dead air during a video, but this is actually just a minute. This is taking a minute to do. If I weren't narrating this to you, this would already be over with. And what I am doing here is logging into my Google account, which gives me, that is what a Chromebook does. The Chromebook doesn't care about anything else. It's not going to ask me to download a separate array of apps or anything like that. It worked. It worked. Ta-da! In hardly any time at all. I have a completely functioning new laptop. And this also folds all the way flat down. Another thing, another precaution for students so that they won't snap the thing off. So there you go. So this one is working perfectly. It's a new machine. It's, I think, 10 years old. But it's a like new machine. I've never had a Dell before. And it takes the sting away of the Chromebook that got to me dead. I now have a neat little rock solid 11.6 inch Chromebook. Really heavy duty construction, rubber edges, hardcore keys that will not die on me. Look at that! It even remembers my computer background. Chrome even remembers my background. So there you go. I don't have any more Chromebooks on the way, just in case you're wondering. I'm perfectly under control. I can quit anytime I want. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. That was a rambly, miscellaneous, chatty mail visit, just because I don't think I'm going to make any more videos today, and I like chatting with you. But I'm gonna wrap this up, and sooner or later, at some point, either today or maybe tomorrow, I'm going to make a video that is less than 40 minutes long. I know it doesn't seem possible, but I am going to do it. Sooner or later, today, maybe tomorrow. You'll be there. You'll be there for it. Thank you, BookTube.